All right, hey there, gang. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in to episode number 10 of our new audio broadcast talking about horses. In these broadcasts, I try to bring you some of the best riders, horsemen, trainers, equine advocates, and thought leaders in the horse industry for tips, insights, and stories. You can listen at home, at work, in the car, or even in the saddle, either through Facebook, YouTube, or by downloading this broadcast directly from the iTunes store. Today, I am pleased to be joined by Miss Karen Rohlf, creator of Dressage Naturally. Karen is an internationally recognized clinician who's changing the equestrian educational paradigm. She believes in getting to the heart of our mental, emotional, and physical partnership with our horses by bringing together the best of the worlds of dressage and partnership-based training. Karen, I know everyone else has been looking forward to this broadcast as much as I have. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome, and I'm really excited to be here and talk to you and your audience. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, and I know you've been doing quite a bit of online work and teachings and things like that, and we'll get into that in a bit. So hopefully, you're a little more of a pro at this than I am. So hopefully I don't mess up.
We'll both do our best, I'm sure.
There we go. It'll all be fun regardless. So
yes.
All right, fantastic. So Karen, for the folks out there listening who may not know who you are or anything about your background, can you give us some of that information, a bit about you?
Yeah, sure. I really started to ride. I was lucky. My mom liked horses when I was little, so I was just a horse crazy kid and did horse camp and all that sort of stuff, and had a horse kind of in my backyard when I was a kid, and then went through pony club. So went all the way through those levels. And then quite by accident, I got lucky enough to start training with a really top dressage trainer, Ann Gribbins, who's a upper, international level judge and just really a pioneer of dressage in this country. And I just got really lucky and ended up, she became my mentor and my trainer and went up the levels. And then she hired me to be a trainer at her facility. And so went on that path. And then quite by accident, I stumbled into natural horsemanship training and really connected with that. I think because it sort of renaturalized or rekindled how I started with horses and that kind of, little kid running around bareback and backwards on her horse. Just, I was like, really? I can do this?
In it for the fun of it.
This is a technique, So it really, at that time in my life, just like rekindled a lot of stuff that needed to be rekindled. And then from that, finding myself as a dressage professional, but like awakened to, more partnership-based training and the techniques of that. And I just said, wait a minute, I got to figure out how to reconcile these two bodies of knowledge. And that's what made I had to create Dressage Naturally because I had to make it make sense in my brain. And, back in early 2000s, I didn't know anybody else who was doing that. So that's what got me to where I am right now. Short story.
Short story. There you go. Short story. No, I love it. So I love how you kind of brought the parallel to the natural horsemanship idea and to how you were growing up with horses as a kid. Mm-hmm. I really like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had my first horse and then I had a second horse, and that second horse was the horse that ended up giving me my full dressage education. So he was an off-the-track thoroughbred with a bow tendon who had not done any dressage at all, and neither had I. So I thought, in fact, he didn't even pass the veterinary exam, the pre-purchase exam for dressage, and I was eventing at the time. So I'm like, that's okay. Who cares about dressage? But he's the one that Anne taught me to teach him, and we went all the way up through the levels, and he's the one that really set me on my career to be a dressage professional. And so he was one of those horses where it really should not have worked. I kept him at home in my backyard, rode in the bushes, went in for a lesson once a week, went home, and every year he progressed a level, and there he was, Grand Prix And then, later as a dressage professional, having access to some really top quality horses and thinking, God, these horses were born with all this talent and they're like not progressing the same as this other horse did. And it wasn't until years later when I had a different horse that I started doing natural horsemanship with that I felt that like specialness, that like, why is this horse now going above and beyond for me? And I think that was it, that as much as knowing the technique and being a professional with some skills and expertise, there was something else that made the horses go, I'm going to do it for you. And I didn't feel that again until I, started doing natural horsemanship. And I realized that some of the fun, silly kid stuff that I was doing with my horse, the thoroughbred, was actually as important as the techniques for dressage. And so it really got my attention when years later, another horse that I started doing natural horsemanship with started going above and beyond in the same way. I went, oh, it's the silly stuff. I put that in quotes, that's what the dressage people at the barn said. Why is she doing all that silly stuff? I'm like, oh, this is actually really important. So that's really how it connected. And it made me appreciate some of the stuff you do when you're a kid in love with horse. You just be with them, and the non-demanding time, and the give and the take, the listening and the talking.
Yeah, sure. And so you've molded then both of those ideas in your program, Dressage Naturally.
Yeah. And I kind of like to give you the big picture. I kind of have these three layers of priorities. And so when I'm with any horse at any level, I look through these three lenses, so to speak. And I think, number one, where's the partnership at this moment? So we can picture the horses that are like, hey, you're cool. What do you want to do today? And the ones are like, I'm freaking out. Okay. So that would be the obvious. Like, if you have a horse that's freaking out, you're like, oh, my priority right here is partnership. I have to go to that aisle in the library or whatever, and use my partnership skills to bring the horse to a calm, attentive, responsive state, right? But then if you have a horse that's in a calm, attentive, responsive state, then it's like, oh, okay, well, now my priority is, how is he moving? So if he's happy trotting around here and there, then I can go, oh, now I can think about biomechanics. And then if the biomechanics is good and he's still a happy partner, then I can go, well, now I need to strengthen the healthy biomechanics, and that's gymnastics. So
gotcha.
In my big picture, there's sort of the more partnership-y aspect, and I draw a lot from my natural horsemanship training. And then there's the dressage aspect, the gymnastic aspect that I draw from my dressage expertise. But what I needed to do is create, like, how do I create the healthy biomechanics in partnership, and the kind of realization that balance should feel good to a horse, harmony should be obvious, and the whole purpose is to help the horse move as freely as to find his balance. So it kind of made sense that we need to listen to the horse, not just to say a horse that's round has their head here and their neck there and their hocks have to bend at this angle. It's how can I help you move better underneath me? Where do you feel like you can move in freedom? And so it's kind of approaching the very basics of dressage from a more partnership based, and to also highlight that the movement can only be as good as the communication that got you there. So the Dressage Naturally piece is really, it incorporates the whole big picture of those three areas, but the signature piece, if you will, is the healthy biomechanics that focuses on getting there by the quality of the communication and the willingness to play around and say, hey, horse, how's this feel to you? How's this balance feel? How's that one? How's that energy level? How's that one? Which one do you tell me that you feel like you can move with the most freedom? And then I do that. instead of saying, hey, horse, I'm the dressage expert, you must put your body here because
Gotcha.
that's where, it says you're supposed to be. So that's kind of the bridge.
So you mean an actual partnership?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I love the way you said it, and I wrote it down. So if I messed it up, please correct me. But I love the way you said the movement can only be as good as the communication that got you there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that a lot. That's
Yeah.
very meaningful.
Well, and it's interesting because if you look at the object of dressage according to sorry, a cat is freaking out in the background. The object of dressage according to the FEI is the development of the horse into a happy athlete through harmonious education, resulting in a horse that's calm, loose, supple, flexible, but also confident, attentive, and keen, thus achieving perfect understanding with his rider. Like, that's the object of dressage, and 2/3 of those words are about mental, emotional state.
Yes.
And, and that's something that all those objectives can be achieved fully at the very beginning. And I remember when I was just doing dressage, I remember reading that as a young professional thinking, someday when my horse is Grand Prix and I do the perfect half halt, I'll feel that. And now I realize, no, this is where we start. Like, we have to start with the object of dressage.
Right.
Start with the harmonious and the education and the willingness and the keenness and the attentiveness, and then we see how far we can go up the scale and still have that and not blow it,
Right.
If that makes sense.
Well, and that's something that we see happening, and we see it in every discipline, right? But we begin to see riders and trainers that get so focused on the movement part that they kind of leave that communication quality out of the equation.
Yeah. And in training, I mean, dressage is, the upper levels of dressage, it's hard. And, I don't want to, sometimes people think that, I'm saying that, like, training is like a big Disney movie and it's all butterflies and roses. So no, there's definitely, moments of like, hey, this is hard. But I think it's always to return to, at the end of the day, it has to be meet the object of dressage first, see if you can take it further, and then at that further step, return to the object of dressage. And then, okay, great, now let's try to take another level. And I think it's just in your mind, having that priority is what's going to drive your decisions, right? Because if your priority is like, let's get those 1-tempies out, it's going to be different than, I want to make sure my horse is calm and loose and supple and flexible and attentive and keen. Okay, let's try some 1-tempies. Okay, things got a little bit out of whack. That's normal. It's a normal training problem. But now we have to return back to that object of dressage at that level. So it's like, I think the prioritizing is what's important to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So talk to me a little bit about your natural horsemanship experience. What drew you to that in the first place?
It was quite by accident. So I was at the training facility in New York with Ann Gribbins, and I had a Grand Prix horse at the time, and he was starting to have some soundness issues and nearing retirement. But the facility that we were at, it didn't have much turnout at all. It was a good facility for working, but not for just a horse to like hang out and have a life. So I thought, oh, well, I'm going to need to find some like stupid horse tricks to do with him, literally. And I remember I'm like watching TV in my house or something, and I see this video with some guy and these horses are running up to him. I was like, wow, that looks cool. And they're standing on pedestals. I'm like, that's cute. So I thought, oh, maybe I can try something like that. And then there was a flyer hanging up at a veterinary chiropractor acupuncturist office that said Pirelli Clinic. And I was like, oh, and it was a horse standing on a pedestal. I'm like, oh, look. So I just went to that and just on a fluke because I thought I'd learned some stupid horse tricks and, something fun to do with this horse. Uh-huh. And And I remember and this was a really laid back horse, like a been there, done that. He was a little bit used up by the time I got him. But he was he was pretty much like, he'd do his job. We'll put it that way. Very calm, bomb-proofy kind of horse. And in that first session of the first clinic, and it was taught by one of his instructors, we did, what Prelli calls friendly game. Okay. So a little, wave the stick around and make sure your horse can be calm. And here was this bomb-proof horse, and I had my little dressage whip, and I'm waving the dressage whip, and I noticed my horse was, I'll put in big quotes, freaking out, which meant he just couldn't stand still. He was very slow motion, but he just couldn't keep his feet still every time I was swinging the stick casually around. And the way this instructor was explaining it, and I was like, wow, I never saw that this horse was uncomfortable. And when I went through the process, and he taught me the timing, and then I found the horse just like exhaled, and I saw, oh, that's relaxed. And I thought, I'm a, Grand Prix riders, we think we know everything. So I'm like, how did I not see that? How did I not see that this horse was really tense? Because he was so slow and so low energy. And so from that very first moment, it got my attention. And I went, wait a minute, I've never looked at things like this. And so really long story short, in doing some of this stuff with the basics of Pirelli and just looking at my horse with these different eyes, I saw this horse start to come out of his shell. And there were particular moments where, like, this was a horse who, if you, like, came with a bag of carrots, he would turn away from you. I mean, he was really shut down. He was willed to me, when he was a FEI horse. And there's this one moment it was about listening to him and just responding really subtly in a moment to what he was doing. And I saw curiosity come in his eye, and I saw a little bit of, like, mischievous come in his eye, and it was the first time I saw, like, the light up. And from that moment forward, he started offering. And so here he was, this Grand Prix horse, kind of used up, really a lot of front feet issues, ready for retirement. And I think I got the best rides I'd ever had with him for another couple of years after that. And I swear it was just pure heart from him. And that was the horse that I started feeling the same, like, special, I'm doing this for you quality that I had felt with my thoroughbred years ago. And so it really got my attention because, number one, I wasn't looking for anything profound, and I found it anyway. So that got my attention.
There
and,
you go.
And then to see this one horse just change so distinctly, I was like, so then I said, well, a little information is worse than none, right? So I better figure this out. And then, so I got this other horse who was he was a mess. He was being given away, and he had bucked off and hurt lots of people. And I thought, great, let me get this horse so I can practice this natural horsemanship stuff. If it messes him up, that's okay. He's already messed up.
He's already messed up.
He's already messed up, so I'll just play with this. And that ended up my horse, Monty, my Lipizzan, and he just was amazing. He ended up, bridleless and Liberty stuff. And so that horse just turned around, and I said, all right, I'm hooked. And through that, the first instructor that I had, David Lichman, who's a Pirelli instructor, we had stayed in touch. And when I came to my first season in Florida, I just happened to come and be right near the Pirelli's ranch in Ocala, Florida. And David Lichman hooked it up so that I could meet Pat and Linda, and we just really hit it off. And Pat and Linda were so generous, and I think so intrigued that a dressage professional was even interested in what they were doing. So I just was really fortunate. They were so generous with their time, and I ended up taking 3 horses and kind of living with them in Colorado and Florida for a couple of years. So
oh, wow.
I learned a lot in that time. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So through this then, through your Dressage Naturally program, you've developed, we were chatting before we went live, you've developed a couple home-based or online-based learning programs now.
Yeah. I'm the first one that I created is what I call my video classroom, and it's where I put usually about 3 new videos every month, and they're on sort of the whole range. It's a little bit random in what I put up every month to sort of serve there's so many different people at different levels in there, but they're all categorized into foundation or biomechanics or gymnastics, connection with the reins. So they're all in different categories. And I created that in 2010 as a way to, I had written a book. And so people had my book, or I'd go give a clinic, and then they wanted to be able to follow up during the year, between clinics.
Okay.
And so that's why I started the classroom. I was like, let me just I'll just make videos and throw them in there.
So it was more of a support group to start with.
Yeah. And it's turned it, there's hundreds of videos in there now. So it's become a really in-depth resource. And I love making those. And you can comment so students can kind of meet each other in there.
Oh, nice.
And so, so that's been going. And then I really had a desire to take some of the clinics that I was doing, which I've been teaching, this sweet spot of finding the sweet spot of healthy biomechanics, that kind of piece in the middle. I'd really honed in the how to teach that. And so I made a course for that. So actually right now I have 3 courses, one for each of those categories. I said there's a Habits for Excellent Horsemanship, which is foundation partnership stuff, and then the Finding the Sweet Spot of Healthy Biomechanics. So these are online courses. And then I have one called the Upward Spiral of Successful Gymnastics. So it's creating the partnership with your horse and really learning the habits that make you a horseman right from the beginning. And then the next one now, how's your horse moving? And then, all right, let's take that place of ease. That sweet spot is what I call the place of ease, where you go, ooh, this feels good. And ooh, I don't have to do anything.
Gotcha.
Ooh, look, those moments you're like, oh my God, this feels amazing, and I'm not doing anything. Like that's what I call the sweet spot. So we have a protocol for like how to actually find that on purpose and not just randomly. Okay. And then in the gymnastics course, then it's really in depth about the theories of gymnastic development and the 6 essential gymnastic abilities that you need to have in order to do all the different movements. And and the sweet spot course, the biomechanics course, and the gymnastic courses are really highly supported. So there's 6 modules, and we have training videos and worksheets. I give you the questions to ask yourself when you're riding your horse, and I have 5 coaches that speak 4 different languages, and Q&A calls every week. And
wow.
And it's super cool because now some of the students, that I would maybe teach once a year or once every couple of years in a clinic, I can talk to them every week now on these calls. And I've even had, this is funny, I had a woman that I was teaching, she lives right near me, so I teach her private lessons, and then she signed up for the course, and I was like, Lisa, you don't need to sign up for the course, I'm right here. And she's like, no, I want the course. And then she started really making great progress because of the course, because she's like, but Karen, I only have you once every couple of weeks in person, but with the course, I've got you every single night at home. And her husband's like, yeah, I know. Every single night I hear you. I'm like, sorry.
Horses, right?
Yeah, but she said it really changed her thought pattern because it was helping her in the moment at home. So it's the online courses of one of my little passions is trying to figure out how to deliver information in a way that empowers people. Like that, it's not just here's some information, but how am I going to teach you how to actually? And I saw on your website, like you're really interested in feel, right? Because you had said, it's not just about here's an exercise. It's like, how do I teach the feel of it?
Right.
So I'm sure you've got the same kind of curiosity that I do. Of like, how am I going to present this?
Yes, exactly.
So that's what's been really fun is to say, all right, what questions do these riders need to be asking themselves when they're doing this with their horse to like get their brain to feel what they need to feel.
Yes, and that's such a huge thing, and and I've thought about the online courses quite a bit, and I've always been a little bit concerned about that. How do you, like talking about the feel or talking about the sweet spot, how do you convey that to riders through your program? I mean, that's something that I feel like some riders will really even struggle with when we're in person teaching them, right? So how are you able to get riders to feel this through the online modules?
Well, what I realized is when I was teaching live, I found myself at the end of each 3-day clinic, I would say to everybody, I'd say, now, did you notice throughout this clinic, I rarely told you when you were in the right spot. I would ask you to tell me. And then I would make a joke. It's like, see, you don't even need me. And so then I was like, hey, wait, maybe they don't really need me.
Okay.
So for example, let's say you're going to, the general premise of the sweet spot is there's everything you do with your horse to try to influence the way they go can be boiled down to 3 conversations. You're either having a conversation about relaxation, about energy, or about balance, right? You're either saying, hey, chill out, horse, or hey, I need a little more, or hey, could you move your shoulder over there? Right? So it's in one of those 3 categories. So then what we do is we try to really refine our quality of communication about each of those. So let's take energy, for example. So let's say your horse is going along and you're asking it for some energy, or you see a rider, one of your students, and you notice that their thighs are really tense and they're digging their heels in every stride. So I would ask my student, I'd say, hey, is your horse matching your picture of energy? And it's a yes or a no question. And what you want to listen for is people going, oh, well, yeah, he's doing
right, the hemming and hawing, right?
Like, that's not, so then it's like, hey, your horse is, you've given a cue, and your horse did something, and your horse is probably going, hey, how did I do? Is this what you wanted? Mm-hmm. And then by just keeping your leg on, you're saying, well, not really.
Right, exactly.
But you're not really giving more information. So we hold a microscope up to that. So let's say, first we have to say, get to a point where we go, is your horse matching your energy? And it's either yes, like really yes, or so you're not allowed to say no. It's like, do something. Okay, now is he matching energy? Then go to neutral. So if you're not getting what you want, change something, ask for it, reinforce it, get out of the way, whatever you have to do. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things we play around until you feel like, yes, that's it. Even if that only lasts for 2 strides, and then you go to neutral, your horse slows down, then you have to put your leg on again. So, and there's a little psychology in how to get the horse to actually hook on to that number. Mm-hmm. But the idea is to really get students to pay attention and listen when they're riding, because trainers do that, right? We ask, and then we know if we got it or not, or if we have to change or revise something. Right. Until we can go, yes, and we give the horse a little touch on the neck, thank you, and we go on. So to give the riders the confidence to do that, because I think most riders are riding around going, is this right? Is this right?
Exactly.
Instead of, and then the trainer might say good when it looks good, even if the rider is squeezing their little guts out, desensitizing their horse to their leg. So right. I want to remove, so that's what I meant about it's only as good as the quality of the communication. So what I tell my students is it doesn't matter what it looks like to me if you're fighting with your horse to get it. So number one, let's make sure you and your horse are communicating. So you're going, hey, horse, would you do this? And the horse goes, sure. Is this enough? And you can say, oops, a little more. And the horse goes, how about now? And you go, yes. That's how I want the communication to go. Right. Once we have that, now I could say something like, I would say, all right, on a scale from 1 to 10. So let's say the horse is going along really in harmony with the rider, and I say, is your horse matching your energy? And the rider goes, yes. And let's say it's like a Sugarfoot jog, and I'm doing a dressage lesson. So I'd be like, that's awesome. You're in harmony. What level energy is that on a scale from 1 to 10? And they might say a 2. And we go, that's awesome. You're in neutral, and you're just in harmony. Now, can you ask your horse for a 4?
Okay.
And then we try there. So then let's say we go through the process, and the rider now is able to ask for a 2 and a 4 and a 6 level of energy and be able to find it and be in neutral. So, and that might take however long, but let's say that that's possible. Now I can say, all right, what adjectives would you like to feel from your horse? And they don't have to know dressage. And I'll say, really just shoot off adjectives. I've had students say, I want them to feel like whipped cream. I'm like, okay, we'll go with that. And if they're not, and if they're not sure, then I'll say, well, do you want your horse to be shuffly and choppy and sticky? And they'll say, no. I said, okay, what are some other, and then they'll come up with adjectives. So then I'll say, all right, so we want powerful and swingy. Okay, great. Those are some adjectives that I think are be positive. And then I say, do your 2 energy, your 4 energy, and your 6 energy, and tell me which level of energy do you feel more of the swingy and powerful. And they will always be able to tell you exactly what energy level is where the horse is the most, whatever adjective they're looking for.
Yeah.
So if you teach, for me, if I teach riders to think like that and play with it and go, go too high energy until it really sucks. Go too low energy until it really sucks. Now find the mama bear. And I say, you tell me, and I have to get students to tell me fast, because otherwise they feel it and then they go, is that right? Should I say that?
Right, they second guess themselves.
And now it's too late. Now it's too late. So I was like, your horse needs you. Your horse is asking you, hey, Mom, what do you want me to do? And the horse is changing. So if you can learn to play with your horse, play with the communications you have, knowing the adjectives you're trying to feel, every single person will always immediately be able to recognize those adjectives. It is without fail. They know. Harmony is so natural, and they'll always feel it. And sometimes I'll have students go, well, I was aiming for powerful and swingy, but when I went through a number 5, oh my God, my horse felt really stretchy. I like that even better.
Oh, great. Okay.
So now, so like I really want to train my students to be very quick to be like, yes, or I'm searching. So at the end of the clinic, something I'll ask is like, you're either searching or enjoying. And in any one moment, I'll be like, hey, Mary, are you searching or enjoying? And they'll be like, oh, and then they'll do something a little more and then get to the enjoying part. Because I think a lot of times riders just kind of end up going around going, well, this isn't too bad.
Nice, right.
I'll just keep my leg on a little more.
Well, and a lot of times I find it's because they're really not sure about whether it is enough or not enough, or right or not right. So I love this idea that you're giving them the freedom to explore and experiment in there.
Exactly. Because, bottom line, you can have 5 excellent trainers, really excellent trainers. And each one is going to like a different level of energy from the horse for different reasons. So I tell people, I was like, there's no right or wrong. I was like, you're going to go to different clinics, people are going to tell you different things. It's just at certain energies for that horse on that day and that movement, certain adjectives are going to be more apparent. And every trainer is going to want maybe a different set of adjectives based on their training system. It's like, but so this way, no matter what trainer you're in front of, it's like, oh, that one wants a 4. Oh, that one wants a 6. But between you and your horse, you have a way of playing so that you can get the horse to hook on to that. And that's where the psychology comes in, and that's a little bit longer, but that's the idea. Is I just really I think when students are worried about is this right or wrong, they're not communicating with their horse, and the communication starts to feel like they're, like you said, they're saying, hey, horse, would you do this? And then the horse, would you do something like, I'm not sure, but just do something. And then the horse says, well, how did I do here? And the rider's like, I don't know. I think it's okay.
Right.
And the horse is like,
So they're not even communicating effectively with themselves at that point, let alone with their horse. So it's no wonder the horses get so confused.
Right. Yeah. So that's that's a lot of what we play with. And so we do that for the communication about relaxation and the communication about changing the horse's balance, up, down, side to side, haunches, shoulders, and just kind of taking the time to get those yields where we have something to play with. So the analogy I use is like the three primary colors, right? If you're an artist and you have three primary colors on your palette, you can make anything. You can make every single color in the world from those primary colors. So let's make sure that we have a range of energies we can talk to our horse about, and an ability to anytime, anywhere, go to total relaxation, and to be able to move the shoulders and the haunches and the whole horse up, down, sideways. And the bigger a range we have of those communications, the more, paint we have on our palette to mix around in, and come up with the right one. Because, as a trainer, every horse is different, and the same horse is different day to day. Right. So when you're riding, those are the adjustments you're making, right? You're feeling the energy. Oh, that's a little too much. Oh, the tempo's this, there's a little wind today. I can tone. I have to talk a little more about relaxation today. And to teach students to have that, I like what you said, like the freedom to experiment, the flow, the really feeling confident to say something in that moment. Because if they remove the thinking part, chances are they're going to be more right than if they say, should this be? And there's time for precision later. There's time for being precise, where I'm going to stand behind them and go, that's 3 tracks, that's not 3 tracks,
Sure,
so there's a time for precision. But one of my quotes that I like to say is that precision arrives out of the possibilities that play creates. So you got to be able to play and then refine and get precise from there.
Say that one more time for me, please.
Precision arrives out of the possibilities that play creates.
I love it.
I do too.
I'm writing that one down.
I can send you a sticker to go on your refrigerator with that on it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's great. That's great. I love it. And that goes back to me anyway. It brings back to mind what you talked about at the very beginning. Kind of going back like you were as a kid, and just kind of enjoying the horse and experimenting and seeing what you can get done, what you can accomplish. And not being so damned worried about that word, or that seeking that destination of perfection, right? Yeah. That just really messes us all up.
Well, and in dressage it's precise, and there's and especially if you dare to post a picture on Facebook and you have it ripped apart. Oh, the pull and the angle and the this and the, oh my gosh. Right. This technique is completely wrong, and it just drives me nuts, and I don't think it serves students, because it confuses them, and it just gets people really constricted, and then the horses are just like, what do you want me to do, lady? They think there is a time for precision. It will always be debated what the best place for the neck and the hock should be, because every horse is different. So again, there's never going to be an answer, and the best thing you can do is find that harmony and communication with your horse. Right.
Well, and through allowing the students to explore, surely they're going to come up with then their own ideas of what that precision should feel like.
Exactly.
And then they'll be able to be more precise without second guessing so much.
Right. And so the next sort of layer is so I tell my students who are out there practicing all by themselves, half a world away, and I'll say, all right, get to the point where you feel like this feels good and it's easy. And then the next thing we do is okay, that's got to be pretty close. If it feels that good and it's easy, it's got to be pretty close. Yes. And then I say, now test it out. If you're trotting, can you get to a walk and a canter from there? And if you're like, this is an amazing trot, and then I go, okay, well, canter. And they're like, hang on a second, I need 20 minutes to prepare for my canter. I'm like, well, maybe, so then we take the functioning. So the sweet spot of the trot is one that feels good, it's easy, and it feels ready to trot, ready to walk or canter.
Yes. Right.
So then the functioning comes in. So I'm like, prepare, think, are you ready to canter? Does it feel ready? All right, now just try it. And then your horse will tell you. I was like, oh, I thought that was enough oomph, but now I need more. So that's where, so you'll get they'll learn to trust the functioning. You test it. Is this trot balanced enough for first level? I don't know. Try a leg yield. Try a circle.
Gotcha.
Were you able to do it without losing your rhythm?
Mm-hmm.
Then it tells you it was. If you were going too fast or too slow, or you were a little crooked, then the horse will tell you, I can't get that movement done, so that spot wasn't sweet enough. And now what can you change? Try a different energy level. Check your alignment. Check if you're tense somewhere. So it always comes down to those three conversations. So the big joke at my clinics is people pay a lot of money for me to stand there and going, well, change something. Just change something, But I mean, it's a joke, but
right,
I do get refined. But it's that, like, feel it, play with it, and I tell people, I promise you, I'll let you know if you're doing something that's getting in the way, or blocking the horse.
Sure,
but
sure.
I think that looseness, that willingness to adapt in the moment, I think more riders struggle with being a little too on the rigid or tense side. If I have a super floppy rider, I think they're fairly easy to tone up.
Mm-hmm.
But the riders who are hesitant or unconfident or stiff and locked, I think struggle. I meet more, I think, of those. So really getting that freedom mentally helps free their bodies too.
Yeah. Which I'm sure on both sides, when they're having these conversations with their horse and they're exploring, I mean, surely all of those things are improving just on their own.
Yeah.
As the riders get out of their own heads.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love it. That's fantastic. So you shared an article a while back that you had written, and I loved it. In fact, I remember asking you permission to share it with our fans as well, about the bits and bitless stuff, the debate, this yeah, exactly. The blasphemy of bitless.
Oh my gosh.
That'll be on a T-shirt next week. But so, can you chat with us a little bit about that? I loved your article. I thought it was fantastic the way that you put that out there, and it reflected very much a lot of how I feel about it as well. So, can you share that with folks?
Sure. Where do I start? I think the main thing is now, these days, I start all my horses with a more natural foundation. So they all start bitless and a rope halter. And because I believe, starting with that, focusing on communication, I've noticed that when you focus on communication and you have a horse that's motivated, their posture will naturally start to become closer to what we're asking for in dressage. I mean, dressage isn't some random invented posture. It's the posture of athleticism. So, when you start seeing horses at liberty and even bridleists starting to show their posture, it starts making me think, maybe I don't need so many aids that I thought to make a horse round. So there's that kind of swimming around in my experience. And then also the idea that when I am trying to look for the healthy biomechanics, again, I'm focused on communication and balance. And then there's this, for me, the sweet spot that I'm looking for is where the horse is so balanced, like I said, that they're free in their movement. And where that freedom comes from is they're so balanced over their legs that their top line can relax and their back can be used for what it's for, which is locomotion and not holding me up. So that's the whole goal of the freedom and the biomechanics, is that let loose top line, that stretchable top line, which is code for, your horse gets round. Mm-hmm. So if I'm riding a horse along in a rope halter and I start wanting to have him get round, to use that term, I realize I'm not using my reins. I'm playing with his shoulders and his haunches and this energy and the relaxation, and then he becomes round. And then, I have these reins, and they happen to be still attached to his nose. So I realized, well, the reins really only have a couple purposes, and I'm not, they're not that necessary. And it doesn't matter if it's on his nose, because mostly if I'm changing his posture, like 95% of the horse is not his head.
Right.
So, I'm riding his body, and I was taught that in dressage. You ride from back to front and you balance the body. Right. So just in training my own horses, realizing, oh, look, they're round, and I haven't switched out of my rope halter yet. But I do believe that the bit is a refined tool for sophisticated, refined communication. So all my horses then do learn to carry a bit, and I ride them with a bit, because bits are fine. There's nothing wrong with the bit. And so in doing that, I noticed that there were some horses who just don't like bits and can act very differently in a bit. And believe me, I would try every single different kind of snaffle that I could find. And like some horses in particular could be like a little on the solid side in the contact with the halter, but with a snaffle, like the tongue goes up the throat, the neck curls up, and they're like completely different set of adjectives. And I remember thinking, if I had never done bitless with this horse, I would have a completely different set of training issues. Completely.
Yeah, for sure.
So after, with this one particular horse, especially after playing around trying to find a snaffle he likes, I thought, why am I doing this? This bit is actually a handicap. It's making things worse. My training's going to progress if I don't have the bit, because now he's not bothered. So I just thought, what a blessing it is, because I would never know that. And my training would have been, horses that curl up and their tongue's up their throat the whole time. Like, that's hard to advance. And I've noticed there's just a certain percentage of horses that just don't like bits. It really can be surprising sometimes, because it doesn't always relate to how you think. They just don't like it on their tongue.
Sure.
So it just, when I started doing that, I'm like, well, I'm so glad that I ride bitless. So I just ride those ones bitless, and every now and then I'll try a bit again, because I think, well, if they're more balanced, then there's even less going on in their mouth, and maybe they won't mind. At some, they just never like that feel. So for me, I'm kind of rare out there, because I train bitless and with a bit, mix and match, whatever tool is the most clear to the horse, that the horse finds, number one, comfortable, and most clearly communicates as an extension of my arm. And if the bit does anything more than that, then it's getting in the way. So I'll flow between. In fact, that horse I was just telling you about that really didn't like the snaffles, now that he's schooling the Grand Prix, I got to a point where, like, ooh, that moment where you're like, ooh, a double bridle would be really cool right now, but he doesn't like snaffle, so he has he has like a half a double bridle, so it's my bitless bridle, and then I hang a curb, and it's it's like the Conrad, has a wide square port that's rotated, it's angled forward, so that when so when that curb, when it's at rest, actually floats above the tongue. And he's perfectly happy with that in his mouth. So that's what so, I can't go on a show, but I'm so happy I found something he likes, and he's now, upper level.
Right.
And and a snaffle was holding me back. I was getting all kinds of contraction issues. I couldn't really get those withers up. But bitless, he takes a beautiful connection, and off we go.
Well, now you got to be careful here, Karen, talking about, the freedom to play with what the horse wants, because that's starting to sound like partnership again. Dressage and partnership. No, that's fantastic. And I've got to admit, I've ridden a few horses now in your bitless bridle. By accident. It was not because I own one yet, but it's because that's what clients happen to have. And I've ridden in a number of bitless bridles out there, and a lot of them are uh, I'm going to try to find an adjective here. I think crappy is the one that I want to use.
Aw.
But a lot of them that I find are that way because they're not really working. They're not functioning the way we would actually want one to. They're not releasing very well, things like that. But I really, really liked your bitless bridle.
Oh, thanks.
Um,
Well, I tried to. A lot of the bitlesses have some piece that tightens
yes.
when you use the rein, or it crosses over, which my horses find really confusing. But
Yes.
I didn't want anything that tightened because then it's leverage. And I'm like, I want for me, my contact is, I imagine my arms are so long that they can reach all the way to the horse's mouth, and then I turn my index finger 90 degrees and I just have my finger sticking in the corner of their lips. Like, that's how I want my contact to feel. I don't want it to do anything extra that I'm not doing for like the main rein, not the curb. But so a lot of bitless, they either tighten when you pull on it, or you have to keep the noseband tight because the way they're made, the cheek piece ends up sitting up right close to their eyeballs.
Exactly, or goes right in it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So then they have to tighten it, but I don't want a tight noseband either because I think a horse should be allowed to open their mouth. That's a whole other story. But so I would ride in my rope halter, and I'm like, well, the rope halter is perfect. Why don't I just create a leather bitless that has the same shape as the halter? So it's just a really fancy halter.
Exactly.
But yeah, it doesn't have any leverage, and I just have two nosebands. One is the super squishy padded one, and then for horses that think that that's a little too comfortable and get real comfy on it and lean or something, then I have a really soft rolled leather that's padded and has just like webbing inside to make it strong and not a chain or anything weird. But yeah, I'm glad you liked it. Yay.
Yeah, I like it a lot. In fact, I've recommended it to a number of my students who are talking about experimenting with bitless riding. So
and it has a little loop so you can hang a bit. Like I'm using it for my half a double, but it's also, you can hang a bit, like I have a bit hanger strap. So if you're transitioning, a lot of people, it's like having the training wheels on. If you're transitioning either to a bit or from a bit, and then I just put reins on each, and you can, during the ride, be like, okay, let me take up the bitless rein. Okay, nope, let me take up the one with the bit. And you can play with the feel between the two until you're, sure you can take
which
one
would
of those
work then
off.
very much like a traditional California bridle horse in the two-rein stage then, where you're working off the hackamore and then experimenting with the spade.
Right.
Very interesting. I like that. Very cool. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Let's see. We've got a couple. Do we have a couple questions on here that folks are shooting in? I know we've had the question. Folks are asking if you are safe from the path of the hurricane, and I know we chatted a little bit about that earlier today. So tell us about that. And folks, if you have any questions, feel free to enter those in right now on Facebook.
Yeah, well, thank you for thinking of us. Yeah, what a storm. I mean, historically, Ocala, I think it's rated like the 8th safest place to be in Florida. Typically, the storms kind of go above, side to side, or below us. In fact, a lot of horses from South Florida are coming up to the Ocala area, and some showgrounds have opened up their stalls so people can bring their horses. So, I mean, we'll get winds. It's, it's not fun, but we're not going to get it probably nearly as much as the people on the coasts. And we'll just keep our fingers crossed. We're cleaning up and preparing around here, but it's just not fun. I'm not looking forward to it, but I hope everybody who's down south gets their horses and animals and themselves out of there.
Yeah, for sure. I was watching a bit on the news last night, some of the damage of some of the islands that have been hit, and it's
crazy.
Just devastating. There was one island, and I'm ashamed that I don't remember which island it was, but they mentioned something like 95% of the buildings on the island are completely demolished.
I heard that, yeah. And then there's another hurricane like following Irma, Jose or something, in the same track, a smaller one, but it's like, yeah. So we've been a bunch of years without. We had them in like the early 2000s. There were a bunch of hurricanes, and we really cruised without any for a while. So,
Yeah.
my generator works, and we'll be ready.
Good. Well, you be
Thank you.
safe, and it's we've said this to quite a few folks, that we just purchased a house in Virginia, and it's open to anyone who needs it. And there's plenty of high
Nice.
ground there for horses that might need it too. So
That's wonderful.
yeah. So all right. So we have a couple other questions on here now. Facebook sometimes does some funny things to me, Karen. So I'm going to give a little warning here. There's been a couple times where it gives me like a 30-second countdown and tells me it's kicking me off at the 1 hour mark.
Oh, okay.
If that happens, I hope you don't mind, but we'll pause our conversation and start a round 2.
Okay.
Right now, it's not telling me anything, but it is saying we're close to an hour at this point.
I'll answer my phone again if you have to call me back.
Perfect. I don't think I'll have to call back. I think I'll just have to end the audio and then start a new one. But good.
Okay.
Hopefully you will answer your phone if I call back.
That's all you get.
There we go. Oh, goodness. Okay, so Kelly is asking, how do you recommend correcting a horse that goes behind the bit?
Yeah, there could be a few reasons. If you kind of go back to like, well, it's either relaxation energy or balance. So that's kind of my go-to. And usually the first thing that I'll check is the rider. So if I'm riding the horse, I'll check, am I tightening somewhere? Am I gripping, contracting, tensing my arms, doing anything that might cause that? So it's always a good idea to look to yourself first. Like, am I accidentally asking this to happen? Then the next thing I check is the energy level. I'll lift my eyes and I'll really think, I'm like, we're going over there.
Okay.
And, it's like, and then, it's like lift your eyes and just get a destination and like get really excited about going there. Because, in dressage, sometimes we can be guilty of like looking down at our horses' necks.
Yep.
Maybe not me, but no.
Well, some people do.
Some people, yeah. And then you can think of it like, okay, this is going to be a really weird analogy, but like if you're walking along looking at your feet and somebody pinches you in the butt, you're probably going to stand up really straight, right? It's like, yes. So the analogy is kind of like that, just a little bit like, hey, let's go somewhere. And sometimes that enough is to having a horse going to do the same thing. And then it just means like maybe you just got a little obsessive and you kind of were looking down and, fiddling, and then the energy was just right there underneath you and internalizing instead of like externalizing, meaning let's go somewhere. Let's remember we're going somewhere. So I would always check I'm not getting in the way, then check I need to go somewhere. And then check the balance, because sometimes when things get crooked, then energy gets blocked. Like one of the reasons the energy might not be going somewhere is because something's crooked. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing I would check, if I go down my checklist and go, well, I'm not constricting him. We feel like we're going somewhere. The energy's good. I feel aligned. Then I want to have a direct communication where I can lift my hands up and forward and say, may I suggest you get your pole high? And then my hands go back down and leave him alone there. And if it's a habit, the horse will probably put his head right back down the next stride, in which case you go, may I suggest you lift your head up? And then when it goes up, you put your hands back down and go to neutral and really forward thinking with your hands on the contact until you establish that communication of when my posture is stacked, like I think of stacking my vertebra. When I'm at attention, like someone just pinched you in the butt, when I'm at attention, that's pole high. Okay. And carry your own neck. Like I play with this. It's like, this is pole high, this is stretching. This is pole high, this is stretching. And the main communication for that is in my intention and in my body. So if I'm in a working gait and my vertebrae are stacked and I'm riding forward to the contact and we're going somewhere and the pole is high, and then I want to start to stretch, I'll think of like putting air between my vertebrae. I just think of like, elongating, and then the horse knows that they can reach down. And I think a lot of times, horses can curl up for different reasons, but sometimes they're getting really stretchy and soft, and they just kind of stretch, but you never gave them somewhere to go. So they're kind of half stretching, but the reins are still short, and now they're curled up.
Yes.
So, there's a lot of reasons. Or some horses don't like the bit, so they're retracting. Some can be heavy, some can be light, but those are that's my checklist. So check you're not causing it. Check that you're really thinking of going somewhere. Check your alignment. And then last case scenario, talk directly to the horse's head and neck. Because if you try to lift the horse's head and neck, but they're internalized, you're bracing, they're crooked or don't have enough energy, then the head's definitely going to go right back down there.
Right.
So it's like you want the neck up relative to the body anyway, because if the horse is like crooked and plopping on the forehand, you don't want the neck. The neck's got to be. You've got to lift the whole body first,
yes,
and let the neck be a natural extension of that. So
and that's definitely more of a balance issue than a posture issue at that point.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just a habit. Like when horses. There's a lot of horses, if they're in their working or collected gaits, if they drop their head a little bit, it takes a little weight off their hocks.
Yes.
So sometimes they're doing it just as, our game is try to get them to carry weight behind. Their game is try to avoid carrying weight behind,
Right.
So sometimes they'll curl up and they'll be like, ooh, this is easier here.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they are objecting and kind of contracting. And, sometimes it's just a habit because riders think that their horse needs to be there to be round, and then it gets to be a little happy place for them.
Yes.
But yeah, I personally, the direct communication to the neck, I just have a couple other things on my checklist first. Otherwise, the head will just go up and down, up and down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nice. Good. All right. So
did I get it right?
Oh, that sounds good to me. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds good to me. And I mean, I guess that would bring to mind one other point about the horse that is habitually going there. I know I see a lot of riders that when the horse begins to go behind the bridle, they give a big release. They throw the reins away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're afraid for promoting that posture, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I also find that to be problematic because then the horse says, "Oh, look, big release back here."
Exactly. Yeah. So sometimes what I'll, if you feel like it's a habit there, number one, I don't want the horse to feel like my hands, unless you're actively constricting your horse, then yeah, maybe for your own habit, it's a good idea to release. But I don't want my hands to be a restriction. So I don't think of my hands as a restriction. So if my horse is curling up, I don't want to say, oh, you have to have a long rein in order to move. I might say to my students, like, well, take the slack out of the reins until you find him, which is different than taking, but it's like, just keep taking up the slack. But meanwhile, you're lifting your focus and getting a destination and checking the energy. And I think that's really one of the hardest things with riding in contact is to have a connection, but keep the energy, not have one drop of that connection net force backwards. It's always going forward. But that's an art that takes the practice. But
exactly.
But yeah, to think, I want the message to the horse to be, my reins are not a restriction. I don't have to give them in order for you to have that room. I want the energy and the body and the confidence and the promise that when they reach up with the neck, I'm going to allow it. I'm going to follow that. And that's where the trust comes in.
Yes.
So yeah, because horses can learn that really quickly. They're like, they do the little duck, like tip the nose, ooh, long range.
Yep, exactly.
Exactly.
They find that little pocket in there. Yeah. A really good question here that I'm very curious to hear how you're going to explain this one over the phone.
Do I get double points for this one?
Oh, you're going to definitely get bonus points for this one.
Okay. Awesome.
Lifting the withers. Help. How and what will it feel like? This is a question from Jill.
Lifting the withers. Well, number one, if you think of like the profile of the horse, just like think of a drawing of a profile of a horse. And we spend our whole life in dressage trying to get, like, make a little circle that goes through the withers, about right where the saddle goes. Think of that part of the horse. We spend our whole lives trying to get that part of the horse up.
Yes.
Now, think of where we sit, where we put a saddle, and where we tighten the girth. So here's the problem. The part that we need to be the most mobile and up is the part that we tighten the girth and we're sitting on.
Right.
So this is the art of dressage. This is the progression of dressage. So there's the long answer, which is the horse gradually, progressively learns to carry more and more weight on the hind end and step more engaged so that the withers and the whole front end of the horse can then lift up. So that's, if you take a second level horse and you look at a Grand Prix horse, there's a good, 6 to 8 years in between there. So
right.
It's just keep doing the right thing. So there's that amount, your horse's withers should come up if your training is progressing. Then there's in a particular moment, what do you do? And there's kind of like, are we lifting the withers up from plunging on the forehand to just lift them up to get them level? And then there lifting them up from level to become collected?
Right, because it's all existing on a spectrum.
Right. So, again, the relaxation, energy, or balance, like I'm going to be playing with, the withers up is a product of, are the hind legs active and underneath? So make sure there's enough energy and that then the body is aligned so that energy, when they step under the center of the horse. And then, so that's going to affect the withers. And then there's how is the neck coming out of the shoulder? And there's a couple different ways. So this is one of my, it depends. I should have said that. My answer is it depends. But so some horses, if they're going along, in order for me to think, wow, their shoulders are really jamming down in the ground, this horse needs to actually stretch more. And if you think of a really good balanced stretch, the hindquarters are flexing down and the neck is stretching down, and that leaves the withers the highest point.
Yes.
So for some horses, I might say you need to get a really good athletic stretch. For another horse, I might say we need to get that pole up. And when the pole comes up and that nose comes just that glorious little hair in front of the vertical, it changes how the shoulder blade operates. And now the shoulders are free because the neck is out of the way. And now the shoulders are free, so they're going to start to move. And when the shoulders are free, now the hind end can come underneath and get more engaged. So for one horse, I might be energizing him and doing a lot of shoulder ins. Another horse, I might be stretching. And another horse, I might be making sure that pole is really high. And so how do we know which one is going to work for that horse? Dum, dum, dum. You try one and see if it feels any better.
Wait a minute. You experiment again?
You do. Because isn't that what we do as trainers? We're like, as we gain experience and we maybe meet a horse and go, I know what this horse needs. But I promise you, those words are the kiss of death. It's like,
yeah.
I know what he's supposed to do. So
right.
Every day you experiment and go, today, let me try starting out with the stretchy stuff and see if he feels any better when I do that. And then you try that for a week and then you go, okay, that happened. Now, next I'm going to try, I'm going to try just doing a lot of shoulder ins. And I'm going to do a lot of walk lateral work in the beginning and really get that hind leg stepping underneath. And then you see how the ride goes. And you're always thinking, I'm looking for that adjective of like, the shoulders feel more up and free. And you consciously structure your rides saying, I'm going to do this today. Nope, I'm going to do that. Nope, I'm going to really get that gas pedal working. I'm going to go out in the field, do some wind sprints. And then I'm going to go in the dressage arena. Ooh, look how up his withers are today when I woke up the hind end. So I think it's the doing it consciously and knowing what your choices are. And then it's cause and effect. But I think to know the main principles of the lower back needs to be bendable, so the hind end needs to be active, the body needs to be able to be straight, the neck, needs to be able to carry itself, and we want the whole horse stretchable. Like those are, with whatever horse, we're always operating with that system, and then it's a matter of on each day to get more of the adjectives that are missing, what's the piece that we need to do? Sometimes I feel like I make everything so complicated because like there's so many choices.
No, it's not. I don't think it's making it complicated at all. In fact, I think
Okay.
it's simplifying it in a great way. I was going to make the joke that, admit it, you're just making it up as you go along because you're experimenting with where the horse is and you're making up the next move as you go along based on where the horse is. But it's all coming down to understanding what it is you're looking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way it's sounding. Understanding what it is you're looking for, evaluating where the horse currently is in actuality, and then experimenting.
Yeah, and are we moving closer to our goal?
Right.
Yeah. And that's where it's so important for students to visualize. So like in my gymnastics course with some of the movements, I have a little chart for each movement and you check off little boxes and movement. One of the things is, I understand how to describe a shoulder in. I can recognize when someone else does a shoulder in. I have the ingredients of a shoulder in,
Yes, right.
And so you have to really have, to look at horses with new eyes of not just doing like, oh, his head's in the right place, but going, what adjectives? I love just using the adjectives. Like how does that feel when I watch it? What's the dynamic? It's the dynamic of energy and how it flows through that particular horse's body that I find fascinating. I like whatever the body of the horse looks like. Let's get it to operate at its best with what it has to work with. Is more important than is that the better horse than this other horse. It's like every horse I just want to operate with the maximum freedom and balance and that's going to look different on different horses.
Right.
So one horse I'll ride a little lower, one horse I'll stretch more, one horse I start really collected right from the beginning, one horse I ride, and I have the same goal for every horse, but what I do with each horse can be really different if you watch what I do throughout the week. And then as they go better and better and get more refined, then they all start looking more and more the same as they get educated. And I can find things faster. But in the beginnings, what each horse needs, I love what you said. It's like, how is the horse right here? What's our next reasonable goal that we're trying to achieve? And what do we have to do to fill in the missing pieces that particular horse has?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's so much. I'm loving more and more every time we talk about it. This idea of your adjectives. I'm really loving that because as coaches, as clinicians, as instructors, that's pretty much what we're doing when we're looking at a horse and a rider, right? We're seeing how does that. So me, I'm all about the feeling, right, more than the look. How does it feel? But it's how does it feel when I look at it, right? So is it feeling balanced? Is it feeling energetic? So it is so much, and I've never thought about it that way until this conversation. It is so much about the adjectives there. I'm loving that. I'm going to steal that and credit you every time I do it.
No problem. Yeah, and to remind your students to like have them tell you what it feels like to them in that moment.
Yes.
And to just like have them open their mouth and say anything. Because a lot of times they think they need a dressage term. This feels like cadence. Like,
right.
It might feel like, literally you won't believe what comes out of people's mouths, but just say something,
Right.
Cookies. Like, okay, it feels like, I've had people, this feels like a glass of Merlot. I'm like, okay, but they will remember it.
Yes,
and that's
exactly.
the point.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then it makes you when you teach them, it's funny if anybody else is listening, you're like, go for the Merlot again.
Oh, right, right. I love
You're
it.
getting a little too, Captain Crunchy again. People are like, what?
I want what they're drinking.
Exactly. My lessons are weird.
Oh, I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Well, you did it. You nailed it. You nailed the question of
I got
lifting the
100%.
withers.
Yay!
Yeah, total bonus points. Total
Awesome.
bonus points. So another one on here from Drury. I like this, and she asks, "Can you talk about how to make the most out of a clinic or single lesson day for a student?"
Oh, so is this from a trainer's point of view?
Yeah, I think so. And she has in parentheses for the student or the student-teacher partnership.
Oh, okay. Well,
I,
I'll
I
tell you.
like that. That could
Yeah,
be a whole broadcast by itself, I think.
yeah. I'll tell you what I do. And so if a student just comes in for like a one-off lesson, or even even if it's a multi-day clinic, like that's still, it's only 3 days. Like that's not much time.
Right.
I do a lot of listening and observing. And I have to remember to tell people, because I'll say, just go ride around and pretend I'm not here, which, is really hard to do. So then the student's out there riding and I'm just staring at them. I'm just watching. And then I have to make a joke or something and say, don't worry, it's not like anyone's watching you,
Right, exactly.
Just something, because they're going to feel stared at. So
yes.
I try to break the tension. I just say, just do what you do. And I'll make some like, oh, that looks awesome. Just something to relax them, because I just want to see where they are. So for me, when I've had one-off lessons, I find sometimes the clinician has gone right in and happened to ask me to do the one thing that just messes everything else up.
Yeah.
And then I have the lesson. I'm like, if we just hadn't done that stupid thing, I would have been able to show you what my horse can actually do. And I didn't get that chance. And or we just get stuck on something funny. So I don't like that. So I like to say my role is to figure out where are they now, and then listen to them. I'll say, narrate this as you go. So tell me, like, is this normal? Or tell me, it's like, oh, here's the thing I need help with. See when he does that? Or tell me like, oh, this is not usually what he does. Like, I try to get them to narrate and explain to me what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. And I'll say something like, and show me your worst. Like, if he has the problem, like, that'd be great if he showed it to me right now,
Right.
So they don't feel, so let's just see what is happening. And then I'll know their goals. If they come saying, I really want to work on my lateral work, say, okay, that's great. Just warm up and narrate. Because then, it's again, where are they right now? I like the fill in the blank. If only fill in the blank was better, everything would be better. I like to get that piece. Mm-hmm. So I feel like my job is to say, what is the biggest piece that's missing, that's preventing you from finding the answer on your own? And then we go there. So sometimes it comes down to going back to a very fundamental piece. And I go, all right, this is really basic, but here's why it's important, because this is affecting that, which affects that, which affects that, and then which is affecting the problem you really came in with. And sometimes everything's going down my checklist, and then it's then we get more into gymnastics, or I'll stand behind and look at the shoulder in, and we'll figure out exactly what the angle should be and things like that. But I really like to observe, honor what they're telling me they have problems with. Sometimes they'll tell me, and I'll just go, okay, well, we're not doing that today, because here's why,
Right.
So, but I want to hear, because it really gives a lot of good information to hear what they think they need.
Yes.
That gives me a ton of information. And, I tell them I have veto power, but I always feel like as an instructor, I need to tell them why. And and then it becomes this experiment. All right, let's try this. Okay. When we get into it, and sometimes I do get very normal dressage trainer-y, and I just will guide them through a lesson, but I usually will say something like, do I have permission to micromanage you now?
Yeah.
And then they'll say, yes or no. And then I say, okay, just give yourself to me and do what I say. But I'm really conscious when I go into that mode of like, just let go of your brain. I don't want you thinking and dialoguing. I want you just to let go and let me guide you. Mm-hmm. And so we have that code. But yeah, so I think the main thing is I observe, I listen, and I try to find the piece. So my joke is I tell people at the beginning of my clinics, or a lesson, I say, okay, you know how you're out to dinner with some friends, and then about halfway through the dinner, you go into the bathroom and you look in the mirror and you got a big piece of spinach on your teeth and you're mortified and you really wish that someone had nudged you and said at the table and said, hey, you got spinach on your teeth. And it would have been it would have been embarrassing for a split second, but then you had fixed it instead of realizing you just sat there for an hour and a half with a piece of spinach on your face. So I tell them, I was like, I'm the person that's going to go, hey, you got a piece of spinach on your teeth.
Right.
And I said, are we all prepared for me to point that out? But then we're going to deal with it and we're going to get rid of it. So with my one-off clinics, and then the game for me is, what's the piece that is equally really important, is getting in the way, and I can get significant enough progress during the time frame that I have, because I don't want to open up a can of worms that I can't. So that's my game as the instructor of going, okay, I know what the big maybe ultimate fix is, but let's give them I just give them step one and I tell them this is what success at step one is going to look like, and then here's the other steps that you're going to need. Or, I'll just say, let's do this. Maybe I know this is the piece and that's your homework, but let's address this piece over here because this is I think we can make progress in this. Mm-hmm. So I'm very conscious of how much time I have with them and what can of worms I want to open up. I really want them to feel like they can go home, not with it. They might not even have the big breakthrough, but they go home going, okay, I know what I'm supposed to be doing with this. I know what I'm looking for. And then some strategies of how to get it.
Right. They have to be able to take home at least some workable pieces.
Exactly. Where, like you would say, it's like, did you feel that? Right. And if they go, okay, I felt that stride. Okay, now I see what we're trying to get. Like, I don't have to make the big breakthrough of like, and now you're just sustaining that amazing collected canter for, 5 minutes. It's like just the one or two strides in there. I'd be like, there it is. Did you feel that? And if they say no, then we'll try something else again. But if we can just get a taste, and especially if it's a student who's doing things in the way that we've been talking about, where they're really free in that moment, they're like, I felt that, or I can make that correction. Once they're in that moment, all they need is a couple strides to aim for. Mm-hmm. and recreate. If I feel like I give them the tools that they need to recreate that.
Right. And if they get that feeling and they've had the permission or the freedom to explore and experiment, surely they're going to remember the feel and they'll be able to recreate that at home.
Yeah. And if it's a student who's not in that mode, who's maybe not feeling, then I would go to one of the fundamental exercises, like the energy number game I said in the beginning, and like, well, that's the biggest piece. Like, they're not going to be able to feel in the moment until they start being able to, confidently say, yes, it's this energy, or, I'm going to make this correction. So then, I would assess that, like, do they have the necessary skill to do what I'm asking? And if not, then I need to give them that skill, that if they came back next time with that skill, then we would be able to take the next step.
Right. Okay, so then I'm going to stem off a little question from that, based on how we were talking about kind of the two different lessons that you could teach, sort of the dialogue versus the monologue, right? The dialogue being you and the student talking and exchanging and going on, versus the monologue being, the rider is there from the neck down. They don't need to think. They just need to do what you're telling them to in that moment. How do you make a distinction between whether the lesson is going to be a dialogue or a monologue? Do you have any kind of a way that you make that distinction, or does it just happen?
That's a great question. That I'm going to have to think about that so I could become more conscious about when I decide. I think I will definitely do the permission to micromanage you if the student has a pattern that is getting in their way.
Okay.
Like, they take a break right when the stuff's getting good, and I might sustain it for, like, no, you need to do like 3 more. Like, I know you felt that one good stride and you want to release and give your horse a break, but you need to go through that a little bit more. You know, when riders aren't going through a problem, and you know as a trainer, like, oh, 2 more circles of that, we're going to get it.
Yes.
So yeah, and for the horse too. Sometimes it's the horse that has a pattern of like, oh, I only do 3 circles, and then, you know, I have to take a coffee break. And you want to just, because that's what the rider always does, and you just need to like, let me expand the world. Or on the other way around, if you have a student who tends to get into drilling, a pattern of drilling, and I want to break that habit, and then that's when I'll take over the controls, and I go, no, stop, drop the reins. Okay, now get off and sit on the fence for a second. It'll drive them crazy. But it's like, I got them. Like, I am not going to let you drill your horse.
Yeah.
Because we need to stop that. You know, so if it's a pattern that needs to be broken, I will do that. Or if it's, again, with like a very precision-y kind of thing where we need to really be in the moment and feeling the rhythm of a pattern, like a, you know, shoulder and circle hunches in, or a serpentine, or, you know, I really want to get some flow, and I want the student to be doing the riding where then I can just get more and more detailed layers of what I'm saying while they're keeping that flow going. The dialogue, I started this, I had a student back in New York that was a real challenge. She was a real interesting character. And I remember one day I went to teach her, because all I did before was the micromanage lessons, because that's just what dressage trainers do, right? You just tell people what to do.
That's typical. Yeah.
Right. And so I remember walking in one time, and this woman, Pam, and she says, today I'm going to just ride around and I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. And then you just tell me if that's good or not. And I remember being so offended, because I was like, but I am the expert. She's narrating what she's doing. And I'm going, oh my God, this is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Because then I could say, yes, you're right. Or I could say, actually, no, Pam, no, that's the haunches that are falling in, even though it feels like it's the shoulder. You know, or, oh, right then, did you feel how your horse did this and you chose to do that? Try in that moment doing that. And that's, this woman who was my difficult student was actually, she showed me this other way of doing it. And I was like, whoa, that actually worked really well. And I learned so much about how I could help her even more. So, so I think sometimes, you know, if you as an instructor are feeling like, I'm not sure what's going on here, like, that's a good time to step back. And for me, also going from standing in the center of the arena to standing on the outside is hugely, I think, a different perspective. So if I start getting really narrow focus and I feel like I start getting really intense, especially if I'm tired and I start doing the like, oh, come on, just get it. If I'm conscious in that moment, I will stop, walk outside the arena, take a breath, and then I'll switch out of micromanage and I'll start a dialogue and say, well, what are you feeling? Or let's, you know, and it kind of breaks the tension, and puts a little more responsibility on the student, but also it gives you more information, because now you can hear what the student's actually saying. And sometimes hearing what a student says out loud, like how those words come out, is really important too, because it could come out like, well, my stupid horse is just leaning on me. You know, it's like, oh, that's a really good thing to know what's going on in your brain.
Right.
Or, exactly. You know, or it could be the student could be just really like thoughtful and going, you know, I can feel this, and I'm remembering to keep my thigh relaxed. And so it's really helpful as an instructor to like stop and just listen or get different information.
I love that. And it, like you said, it gives you a big key or a window into that internal dialogue that the rider's experiencing, because that can change everything.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I love it. Okay, so the last question that we're going to take from the audience here, this question comes from Lori. And I'm going to preface this because I know Lori pretty well, and Lori has a pretty large battery of health issues that she's working with right now, working through, and she's been for a while. And she's riding an off-the-track thoroughbred that is a rock star. He's a fantastic horse. She says she would love to hear your ideas on good exercises for keeping your horse from anticipating. I have a wonderful off-the-track thoroughbred, but he does anticipate and tends to rush when he thinks he knows what and when it's time to do something. We have to do everything right now at the walk because of my issues, so he does get a little antsy and wants to move it, move it. I think she typed that in there just to get me singing and dancing because she knows I can be goofy like that. So, but yeah. So, and I'm gonna say as another preface to this that Lori is absolutely my hero for continuing to ride her horse in spite of the health issues that she's got going on. She's a rock star. So,
wonderful. Well, Lori. Good for you for continuing on and finding a way to make it work. It's like, okay, I can just go at the walk, but I'm going to go at the walk. So I love that. Like, well, let's find out what we can do. And I love that that what you describe is what I call a lovely problem. Like, oh, my horse just anticipates everything I ask. Like, that's what my students, I know it can be a problem, but it's like, let's remember, it's a lovely problem because you have a horse who's eager and ready. So a couple of things that come to mind. I mean, one thing would be, can you set the horse up, like really zoom out and get a big picture? I would think of things like, what if my horse was turned out first? Or what if my horse could play at Liberty first or do a little online? Like, I kind of think, is there a way for the horse to arrive to the session feeling a little bit satisfied already? So I'll just kind of give you that to think about, and you can make that fit, your situation. And then when you're on him, what's cool is that well, number one, the walk is a challenging gait for relaxation. Relaxation is like so integral to a walk because if a walk isn't relaxed, it usually turns into a different gait.
Right.
So it's like that's, but I'll tell you what, if you can take this time to master the walk, your education is going to skyrocket. Most people don't take enough time at the walk, and the only times that we do is because we have to, because a vet or a doctor says that we have to.
Yes.
But every single time that I've been in that situation, whether it was because of back pain from me or recovering from an injury from a horse, it has paid off so big time because the walk is like the only gait where every stride is independent of the other stride. Every leg is independent of the other leg. And you have a chance to really go deep. So that's awesome. If your horse is anticipating, it's about relaxation. So for me, it would be like really getting that conversation about relaxation and maybe getting really good at having a really stretchable horse that you can return to and kind of let some of the air out, like to be able to release some of the tense energy. And then it's going to be an exercise for you and your body to how do you stay, in collection, but still in relaxation, and be able to do maybe breathing exercises, like maybe look up some breath work for yoga and stuff like that, so that you can be as relaxed as you can, even if you're toned and in a good posture. And then you can also, if he's just super eager, I'm not sure what level you're at, but if you start playing around with lateral work and halts and backups, and you can do so many, pretty in-depth, entertaining things for your horse that could satisfy his need to move. Especially lateral work is a great way to ask your horse to move, but it also promotes that they stay in the walk usually. But it says, instead of you saying, no, don't go, you can say, yes, go, just do this instead. And then often at a walk, if they're anticipating, their backs can get tight and they can get jiggy. So I would think a cool thing to play with would be transitioning between the different lateral positions, like going from a shoulder in right to a haunches in left, and then, or the shoulder into renversy kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Things that promote a lot of suppleness, and then mix it in with some stretching, something like that. So I'm not sure if that's like connected with her level of ability or education right
absolutely.
now. Absolutely.
And that's
okay,
a
cool.
lot of stuff I feel like she's been able to explore more now that she's been limited to the walk for quite a while. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And really, like, it's one of those, it's like, put limited in quotes, because I promise you, you're going to so be happy that you put the time in. I mean, it's just, you can go from collected walk is the best preparation for a pee-off. I mean,
right.
You can get into school halts, and, if you spent walking and pee-offing, and, and then later when you're healthy, you can do more, it's like your horse is going to be so ready. And with the lateral work, once you're clear on the positions, really expanding, like lengthening and shortening the stride in it. And if he gets jiggy, then just go a little more sideways, and it can help. That's a great way to put a horse back in a walk when they get tight in the back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those two things of, combination of just making sure you can call upon relaxation in your body, and having that stretchability, like a nice deep stretch free walky thing in there, and then to satisfy your horse's need to do stuff. Some horses, the best way to relax them is to add energy and do more,
mm-hmm.
because then they go, whew, I really did something. Because sometimes if we hold them back all the time, they just want to go more. Anyway. Something
That's awesome.
like that.
Well, Lori's pumping in a bunch of messages here. She seems pretty excited, and actually, I have a session with Lori tomorrow, so I know what we're going to be working on.
Yay! Awesome. Awesome.
Good. That's great. So this is so much fun, Karen. Again, I have to thank you for agreeing to come on here with me for this. This has been a ton of fun. I know we have also some professionals that tune in to the broadcasts, so I'm curious if you could chat with us a little bit. We talked about the online coaching that you're doing, and you mentioned also you have a mastermind group for professionals. Do you want to share some information about that with us?
Sure. First, can I give the website where people can find those courses?
Absolutely, please do.
Okay. I mean, my website's dressagenaturally.net, and you can get to everything from there. But if you want to go directly to where the 3 courses, and one for the horsemanship, one for biomechanics, one for gymnastics, you can go to do.dressagenaturally.net. So do.dressagenaturally.net. And you can read all about them there.
Awesome. And I've just shared that in the links on our broadcast now also.
Oh, perfect. Yay. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, the mastermind I started last winter, and I just started a new group in. We've been doing it in 6-month sections. And the reason for that, it's not a certification program. It's not about teaching dressage naturally at all. In fact, I have all different disciplines in there. But it was the realization that if my mission is to create happier horses in the world, make the world a happier place for horses and their humans. And I've been focusing on the horses, and I've been focusing on students, but there's a lot of cranky horse trainers out there. Would you agree? I know you're not one of them.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree.
So there's a lot of cranky horse trainers out there, and the industry business model is not really designed to be good for horses, right? The only way to make enough money is to pack as many horses as you can into your boarding facility. Mm-hmm. So now they have to rotate their turnouts now, right?
Right.
Or sell horses. Oh, maybe it's not the right horse for that person, but I need the money, so I'm going to sell the horse. Now, not every trainer does this.
Right.
But I'm saying that the way the model is set up, you're incentivized to get into factory training, because you work an hour, you get paid an hour.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And in going through the process that I've gone through with my business, I didn't have a master business plan for that at all, but I found myself in 2003 or 4 saying, because I was so burned out on horses, I was ready to quit, to be perfectly honest.
Really?
I thought I was going to quit horses for real. I was really burned out. I was working as hard as I could. I was training really top quality horses, working as hard as I could, had a waiting list. I could not pay my bills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, that was not a nice place to be. So when I recreated my business, I started saying, I was like, okay, I have a property now. I don't want boarders. I don't want to do horse sales. I don't want to take horses in training. I want to take horses and people together in training, but not just fix somebody's horses anymore. Mm-hmm. So I had this list of things I didn't want to do, and I went, oh crap, that's like the only way to make money in this business. And I said, I want to teach people who are really wanting to learn and really want to learn independently, that want to be empowered. Like, I want to empower people, and that means I want to teach people who want to be empowered. So I wanted them to be able to think independently. And so when I started creating, just kind of by accident, my subscription website and stuff, I was like, oh, this is what's called a leverage business. And thinking also of how to, when I knew what I really wanted to offer people, when I knew the value, then I stopped saying, I teach 1 hour private lessons. I said, no, I empower students and their horses to be the best they can be. And there's lots of different ways I can do that. I can do it in a group. I can do it remotely. I can do it through video coaching. I can do a private one-on-one. Like, it just expanded. And what I realized is, people were actually making more progress when I offered them all those different ways of learning instead of just the work an hour to get paid an hour. So it was giving more value to my students. I was loving it. And P.S., it was a different business model. Mm-hmm. So the goal of the mastermind is really to help trainers and professionals have a more fulfilling and sustainable and profitable life that they can love in the horse business. Because I remember back in New York, looking at the end game, looking at the seniors in my field and going, I'm not sure that's where I want to end up.
Right.
Like, they're
for sure
old and they're still doing what I'm doing now, and they're cranky and their backs hurt and they can't walk, and they're, I was like, well, this is my career and I love this. I love what I do, but this is the end point of my career. I don't want to do that. So, so what I help is people, really get in touch with what they do, what they really do, what's the value they're really bringing to students. And then, like, all right, how are all the ways that we can really deliver that value and really own your unique genius? And so it's everything from mindset to pricing to leveraging to how to take what you're teaching and do it in an empowered way that you could leverage it, because leveraging isn't just about dropping information on the internet. Mm-hmm. It's about delivering it in a way that people can learn it and it can be transformative. So that's kind of my little specialty hobby, is like, how can I teach this in this way that it can be taken in, even if they're standing in the middle of a snowy field in Sweden practicing this. So it really covers every piece of the business. And so I've got people in there who are just starting their business and want to set it up right. I have people who are already burned out and they're like, I can't do this anymore, but I still love what I do. To people who have waiting lists of students and they're just getting pulled in a million directions and have no life. To people who are ready to put, make an online course and then helping them figure out how to put their content, how to do that. And some, the marketing and stuff that I know, and then helping refer people to, how to get the information they need for the different pieces. But it's just super fun. And I just think of, that's my next piece is going, if I can do what I can to eliminate the cranky horse trainer that's making horrible decisions for horses and students, if I can put those guys out of business, and if I can find the really heart-centered ones, the ones who really want to love what they do and show up with joy for their lessons and adore the students that find them, I want those to be really successful, because I think that makes me feel good that that's going to help create a higher number of happy horses and humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you. That's definitely I think a much needed avenue for professionals in this industry, and you know, in hearing about it, I mean, I guess I could see that being as valuable for farriers and saddle fitters and
yeah, I have some body
really.
workers in my group today. Yeah, they're like equine and equine assisted therapy, like anything that's in the one-on-one model. You can do this with, and just, you know, all the business training and masterminds that I was in, I just had to translate it to the horse business. So I kind of do some of the same coaching that I got in all the other business courses, but then also adding in how to actually do it in this horse business. And so I can really help with the languaging and, all right, I'm doing group packages now. How do I tell people? How do I up my prices? And, you know, we'll give them the email to send people, and student-teacher interactions too. You know, it's like, I have this student that's doing this. Like, how can I, you know, so different ways and formats for lessons, kind of like we talked about with the micromanage versus dialogue. Like, you know, there's all different ways to do group lessons.
Right.
You know, there's like, I don't know, 6 or 7 different formats that I came up with, and when would you use each one and stuff like that. So there's an article I just wrote that will be coming out in the next Equine Wellness magazine, where I talk about the horse industry and taking a fresh look, and I'm really curious to see what kind of response it gets, because I kind of call out the industry a little bit, but, you know, and give some hope and some suggestions. So I'm really...
So you're either going to be deified or burned at the stake.
Probably a little of both, depending on who.
Right. Now, so that's coming out in the Equine Wellness magazine, you said?
Yeah, I think their next issue comes out in October.
Okay.
But you know, and in my typical style, I say I don't have the answers, but I think we need to start asking the questions. So.
I love it. Is that something that you plan on sharing after it's published in the magazine?
Yeah. I'll end up putting that up on my blog.
Fantastic.
Thingy. So
Good. I look forward to reading that one. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So awesome. All right. This has been so much fun. Let's see. So now I have kind of a wrap-up list of questions here, because we've been going at this for an hour and 48 minutes now. It's amazing how the time flies.
Yeah, it's fun.
So this has been fun. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody out there listening, too. You guys are fantastic. I have to say, this is the most active we've had an audience base on any of our broadcasts so far.
Nice.
So that's a pretty good sign. We might have to do this again.
Sounds good. Well, you know, it's really nice, Patrick, to have a little time to talk and not be like, it's 45 minutes. You know, it's just really been fun talking to you. I love the questions you're asking, and just to kind of drop into this space and not feel rushed. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And that, honestly, that was a big part of the reason why I started doing this. You know, it was my goal behind this, was just, you know, horse friends chatting, and the rest of the world can hear it.
Yeah, I love the idea. And I just was listening to some of the other people you've interviewed, and it's just, I feel honored being in this company. So.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor to have you in this company. So, okay. So then you may have, if you've listened to some of the others, you may have heard these wrap-up questions. But
I didn't hear the wrap-up questions.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, no.
Good. Oh, good. Then there's the moment of surprise.
Okay, good.
So if there was one specific thing you could recommend then for riders to focus on as a primary means of improving their horsemanship, what would that be?
Trust their instincts.
Ooh, nice. I love it. If you could ride with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. I think it would have to be Nuno, just because everyone talks about Nuno, and I would love to experience it just
Yes.
to get it firsthand.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I got some great stories of riding with Nuno the other day. Well, the other day. I'm one of those people that the other day could have been 5 years ago, but
Yeah.
this was just maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I got an opportunity to ride with Bettina Drummond, who spent quite a bit of time with Nuno, and so it was great listening to some of her stories. And then this February, I'm going to be traveling to Portugal and we're going to be in Portugal about 5 weeks with Luis Valencia, who was Nuno's partner for a number of years.
Yeah.
So,
oh, wonderful.
Yeah, so hopefully, my fingers are crossed that we'll be able to do our broadcasts from Portugal also.
That's exciting.
Which will be fun. So you'll have to tune in for that. We'll get some kind of secondhand stuff going on there. So
yeah.
But awesome, fantastic. What is your personal definition of, you can pick either dressage or horsemanship?
Wow, that's a great question. My personal definition. You'd think I would have one.
We never do. We always think we have one until we're called out on the spot.
Yeah. I love the object of dressage. I mean, I don't know if that's a personal one, but it just so sums up it. Sums up it. You can tell I'm getting tired. Wow. Yeah, can I steal that one?
Yeah, you can totally steal that one. Absolutely. If that resonates with you.
I'll say it again. If I've memorized it's sort of like it's mine. So, because it's just so good. So the object of dressage is the development of the horse into a happy athlete through harmonious education, resulting in a horse that's calm, loose, supple, and flexible, but also confident, attentive, and keen, thus achieving perfect understanding with his rider. I'll take that. It's like so not standard dressage-y.
Right.
And but it is. It's in the freaking rule book. And it's so poetic and beautiful. And I just, sometimes dressage gets a bad rap depending on who's looking at it and who's doing it. And I go, that's not dressage. That's just dressage done poorly. But like dressage itself, that's the definition. And I just think it has everything in it. So I'm going to stick with that one.
I love it. Somebody's going to quote you now.
I'm going to plagiarize my personal definition.
Somebody's going to quote you now from this broadcast. Karen Rohlf's personal definition of dressage. It's in the freaking rule book.
Read the freaking rule book.
I love it. Okay, so tell us again, how can folks find you?
I'm very Googleable, if you spell my name right, but dressagenaturally.net. That's kind of the home base, and if you click around my website, you can get to all sorts of stuff on the dressagenaturally.net, and then if you get to it, it'll say in big orange letters, explore your possibilities, and then there's 4 little things you can click, and that'll bring you to my book or the video classroom or the online courses. So you can find everything from there, and there's a bunch of articles on there and some videos, and so feel free to poke around.
Perfect. Very good. Okay. And then the last one. So in most of the videos and the audios that I do, at the end of it, I ask a question of the day. And this is a question that I put out there to the audience, and they have to answer it. And it can be fun. It can be whatever. A lot of times I just pull something off the top of my head. So sometimes they're pretty lame. But anytime I have somebody with me, as in the case of this broadcast, the guest gets to ask the question of the day.
It can be anything?
It can be anything.
Let's see. if your horse, after you're done riding your horse or being with your horse, and he goes back out to the pasture, and his buddy comes up and says, "Hey, how was that today? What'd you learn?" What would your horse say?
Ooh. That's way better than any of the questions of the day I've ever asked.
Boom.
Boom. I love it. I love it. That's awesome. All right, gang, you heard the question of the day from Miss Karen Rohlf. Give us your answer in the comments section below this audio. Karen, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. Thank you for joining me for this audio.
I had fun too. Can I leave you with my favorite quote?
Oh, yes, please do.
Okay, awesome. My favorite quote is, "Never underestimate the possibility for things to improve in ways you cannot yet imagine."
I love it.
I gotta stop being so negative. Don't you think? I really gotta work on that.
I don't know. You seem pretty positive to me. This has been so much fun, and I know everybody joining in is probably agreeing with us because we've got all sorts of hearts and smiley faces flying across the screen here.
I love the hearts and smileys. Yay!
They're fantastic. So thank you, Karen. Thank you to everybody who was tuning in here live. Gang, I really do want to thank you for tuning in to episode number 10 of Talking About Horses. I really appreciate you giving Karen and I your ear this evening. Please remember, if you've missed any of this broadcast, you can access it. You can access it in its entirety through Facebook, through YouTube, or by streaming from iTunes. Whatever outlet you're listening to, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, a share. Your word of mouth is the fuel for this fire. And gang, tune in next week for my interview with Callie King from CRK Training.